Well, we kind of already went over this, but I'll sort of phrase it in the way that you did, which is Apple Vision Pro is the best thing that ever happened to VR, including for Meta, who has made their own headsets.
So this is probably like the highest confidence sort of take that I have, having been in sort of the middle of the thing when I used to work at Oculus at Meta. Side note is I used to joke, or semi-joke, I would say, in like company all hands and stuff, that like the best thing that could happen to us was if Apple decided to enter, VR. And there've been rumors about this for a long time, because I really do think that, as I said, when Apple cares, everybody cares was going to be a thing that would help us tremendously, like massively floats all boats, massively grows the pie. And it was interesting to even see Mark Zuckerberg's video recently where he kind of talks about the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously he cares about what's happening, so why not talk about it, which I give him huge props for. And it's just so interesting, putting aside whether you agree or disagree with things he said. I mostly agree, but putting that aside for a second, it's so interesting to see how Meta, in the voice of Mark in this case, has now shifted from evangelizing to competing, right? So before it was like, hey, VR is cool. Like, you got to try this. Please try it. Like, go try it. Here's some cool things that you can do with it. To like, no longer, consumers don't need to be convinced that VR is cool. They now know that VR is cool.
Yeah.
So now it's like, why do we have a better product? And I love that because now it's all focus is on the teams that build the product and how to make it better, and chasing your competitor, whether they're in front of you or in your rear view mirror. It's kind of like Android versus iOS all over again.
That's the comparison I think a lot of people would make. And obviously it's Apple, so it makes sense that this is the iPhone of it, but the competitor to the iPhone often needs to come up with the reason why you would choose it over the iPhone, especially in this country. That's just a very popular thing you have to do.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's price, sometimes it's a couple features that this one doesn't have, sometimes it's some customization that this one doesn't have. And there are a lot of really good reasons why people would buy a Quest 3 over a Vision Pro, despite being a seventh of the price or whatever it is. So I think that's a comparison a lot of people will make.
On that note where where you say, like, now that we have competitors, it legitimizes everything. The interesting thing that I've noticed about this that you actually said in your blog was that this is one of the first Apple products that didn't really meet the build it and they will come mindset for developers, which I also find weird, right? Because Apple announced it 8 months before it came out, something like that. And they were like, we've got these dev kits available. You can build these apps. And it seems like you would have developers rushing to make Apple Vision Pro versions of apps, right?
Exactly.
When it launched, there were like 600 that were native. Everything else was iPad, which cool, you can natively port over stuff. But why do you think developers have not garnered so much interest in making native Vision Pro apps? Like, it seems worth it to do now so that when the second generation's out, you already have something you can build on. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I totally agree with everything you said. And I think that it's likely that Apple just really underestimated the sort of the Apple magic influence over developers by thinking that more things would show up. Of those 600, frankly, Apple probably had to even lower its bar for approval in the App Store because there's a lot of like random clocks,
stock tickers,
and timers and things.
Widgets you can put on walls.
A collection of widgets makes sense, but the widgets as like maybe individual apps are just not as interesting. So I think they did underestimate or overestimate their power over developers, and didn't actively do what they possibly could to get some of these key apps in the store, to like really, even if they had to pay developers or give them all sorts of incentives, I think they probably should have done that.
They thought the incentive would just be we're Apple,
right? So, and I'll mention my favorite example of where Apple missed a beautiful opportunity. Have you guys tried Piano Vision on Quest 3?
I think
I've seen
Ellis
videos of
has.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Ellis is a piano player as well.
Ellis, what do you think of that app?
It's one of those things that like, wow, this would be so cool.
It's a really good way of phrasing it.
And like, there's like a Piano Vision like clone in the Vision Pro store, which is like really not that good. It's called Piano Frames, I think. But Piano Vision is like a legitimate tool for learning how to play piano. I learned piano as a child and I forgot it all, and I sort of went back to learning it with that app. And it's just like I can't think of a better example of an augmented reality app.
Right.
Yeah.
But that one. So why isn't it available on Vision Pro?
Right.
You know?
It's so weird. It just maybe it's because the price is expensive and developers don't know, but my sort of take on that was that I just felt like developers didn't know what to do yet. And I think that that's why you're seeing so much kind of shovelware apps is because people don't understand yet what the paradigm of spatial computing is versus just something in virtual reality.
We at Oculus, we had to chase developers a lot. Like we sat down with them, we helped make the app better. We put a lot of budget to work towards, funding this development. And I think maybe Apple could have done a bit more of that. Maybe there's still time to do it.
Yeah, when we talked to Apple about this, maybe they're not talking to us about it, but they talk so much about the development of the hardware, how amazing the hardware is, how long they've spent inventing new technologies and building new things, materials inside this to make it physically possible. We had to invent this to make it fit in this so we could do this. I'm like, that's all amazing. But people have to use it now. There are things that they're going to want to actually do in the headset that are kind of like lacking at the moment. Like there's a couple big apps, Netflix, YouTube, things that just aren't here that I think if they were, that I could more easily answer the question, what does it do? Because I would have a couple more things to say that, oh, you already know about Netflix. You know what this does. And it's just right there, just right on the doorstep of like being easy to explain. Here's another one of your hot takes. I'll read to you. The battery, this thing right here, the battery hanging off the Vision Pro, I thought it was, a compromise for weight and heat, but you're saying it's actually an intentional decision and that they will keep it this way for the foreseeable future to tether other things and get you used to the idea of tethering to the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Please explain.
And this is a super controversial one. I do really, really think that it's one of the most important things that Apple did. It's like number 2 in my list of thank you, Apple things. The first one is Gaze and Pinch and introducing the world to that. It's just a gift to humanity. This one is not quite a gift to humanity, but it sets the right tone for VR. Taking the battery off is the first step in a journey of reducing the weight by pulling components, but also pulling heat generation out of the headset. Just to give you an idea, I don't know how much this thing weighs. Obviously, there's a lot there besides the battery, but the Quest 3 battery is 69 grams.
Nice.
Right, which is like, 15% maybe of its weight?
69 grams. Yeah, it's about, 500 grams. Yeah.
Something like that,
sure.
Right? But when you start to take off 70 grams for the battery and you take out a whole PCB, and now all of a sudden you can take out the fan because you don't have heat on that thing anymore. And you start to find a path to that magical 300 grams, which I think is where things really turn. And people stop saying that this headset is too heavy to wear, but also it starts making their face, hot. And Ellis, I hear you totally on that. Totally hear you on that. So the only way to do that is to set expectation with V1 that there's a tethered brick off this thing, all the way to inventing a belt clip and sell it in your store, despite the ridicule that may seem. I think that's all worth it.
So, okay, the foreseeable future of Vision Pro then is battery is always tethered, but also getting people used to that idea also allows them to, in the future, possibly take more pieces of Vision Pro out of the headset and tether them as well so that you get this lighter and lighter face computer.
Yep.
It's a good idea.
And not only moving things to this brick, but at some point, you may not need the brick anymore because you can just plug it into your MacBook or your iPad or even your iPhone.
Sure. Definitely. Well, I guess the magic right now is that you just look at your Mac and it appears, and that's super cool. But if you get, let's say, because we expect there to be a non-Pro of this headset at some point. An Apple Vision Pro is $3,500, an Apple Vision Air or whatever
15
is somewhere down the road, which has a certain different feature set that enables it to be cheaper.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't do the wireless stuff as well, but you can plug it right into your Mac, and they still have the tether, and everyone's used to the tether.
I think getting that headset to $1,500 without getting rid of the compute is going to be a really tall challenge.
What do you think is, okay, if you were to start now chopping things out of Vision Pro to get to the magical $1,500 headset, what do you get rid of right off the bat? I feel like you have to get rid of the eyesight. With today's tech.
Yeah, I think, eyesight, I don't know how much that weighs, but it is a bit of dead weight. You might argue. I think their depth camera, not the LiDAR, but the other camera.
True depth
camera, which I think they only use for the personal enrollment. It might be another thing you can get rid of.
Use your iPhone to enroll.
Just chop that off altogether.
Yeah.
I think they can probably use 4 or 5 tracking cameras instead of 6. You have to think about your mouth because that's almost exclusively why you have the cameras facing down. Anyway. But then I think, so then the next thing I would move out is the M2 chip and that whole thing.
Yeah.
The last thing to go would probably be the R1 chip and everything around it because that's when you really
to be there.
It needs to be there because it's a sensor.
Right. I wanted to drill down into that a little bit further into the plugging in paradigm because Apple specifically, it seems like they want this to feel like it's a computer. Don't need your MacBook anymore. You don't need it. It's a whole thing. It has an M2 chip in it. It's just as powerful as a MacBook Air.
Yeah.
So it's a weird paradigm, right? Because they're basically selling it as a whole separate computer, but they're also selling it as a headset, which we don't traditionally see as a computer.
Yeah.
And I know that Oculus, they have a standalone chip inside of it too, but you're not like running a browser on that generally. But Apple has Safari in there. They've got iMessage in there and all of these different apps. Do you see a point in time where I know that you said that they were going to like remove it and switch to plug. Could they feasibly do that, and have like a cheaper one that doesn't have its own computer and is powered by a separate computer?
You could sell this as an accessory, right? This is essentially an iPad Pro in a box, probably with some additional co-processing capability. Maybe not even, because if you want to make it pluggable into an iPad, you then have to move that into the iPad anyway, right? So this is like, you could literally sell the compute as an option, right? That turns your headset into a fully, enclosed spatial computer that gives you the equivalent of an iPad Pro in terms of compute capabilities and power and so on and so forth. And I think that's a very viable computer to have with you.
It's like a Mac Mini in a way.
And we're very close to it.
Doesn't have a screen.
We're very close to this being a spatial iPad Pro that's very usable and suitable for a lot of different tasks. Forget the price, right? But as far as job to do, I think we're very close. We're maybe 2 software updates away, plus filling in the App Store gap from being there, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Could we get rid of the speakers and have consumers be happy?
You have to use AirPods.
You have to use something else. But that just feels like in 99% of other electronic times we're using devices, we're using not the speakers on the device. But it seems like VR headsets, I don't know a lot of people that feel that way, that wear specifically headphones when they're doing VR.
Yeah, I think you probably don't need to, because I don't think it necessarily buys you that much in terms of weight reduction and cost reduction. And I think it does take away from that sort of magical put it on and you're good to go kind of thing. So that probably would rank a lot lower in my priority list.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching this clip. Quick suggestion for you. Translate to Spanish, like and subscribe to the podcast, please. Thank you.
Dale me gusta y suscríbete al podcast, por favor, gracias.
It's the best one of the last 20 takes. Impressive.